Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So, Tarragon, here's a video that everyone should have seen coming because the House of the Dead 2 Remake Chapter 1 demo was uploaded on Steam as of yesterday. And you know me, you know the channel, you know I've loved this entire franchise, and I did want to talk about this one. And MegaPixel Studio remade the original game, and if you saw my review on that, you will know I absolutely ravaged the ever-loving hell out of the game. Between the wrong colorways, the wrong vibe, remade music that just didn't sound good, and absolutely garbage hit detection, it was a 1 out of 10 all day long and twice on Sunday. And unfortunately, the House of the Dead 2 remake here, at least in the first chapter, is not doing anything much better. Now, it is a slight improvement off the original remake, but when you start in the dumpster, even if you crawl out, you are still covered in absolute shit. And unfortunately, this game, at least as a demo, is absolutely a mess. You'll see here I have to switch from keyboard to mouse in the actual game, because when I got into the game trying to use a mouse, you're supposed to click on something to be able to continue. I spent 2 minutes on this screen and couldn't even figure out how to get past it. I had to use a controller to bypass that menu and then switch over to the mouse aiming in the options. So even trying to get this game started can be an absolute messy disaster, and that is not something that should happen. The basic UI elements should function and allow you to actually get into the game you're trying to play. Maybe I missed something, maybe it was obvious, but trust me, I spent a lot of time with it, so if you know how to bypass that menu with a mouse, leave me a comment down below. Now obviously this is just a straight remake of the House of the Dead 2. All of the graphics have been remade, they have remastered the soundtrack, and it is not great, but at least this time they left the original music tracks in as well as an option, so you at least have to give them credit for that. Now, the one biggest complaint I had about the original House of the Dead remake, and I will show you a clip later on the video explaining exactly why, the hit detection being completely off, at least here seems to be cleaned up. There's definitely a few shots that register with blood splatters that I hit where there is no effect on the zombie in front of you, but otherwise this is a marked improvement off the original remake, but that shouldn't really be something to celebrate too much. If you have a light gun game, hit detection should be the bare minimum of how it's actually supposed to function. And if you watch my channel consistently, you know I'm very optimistic. I try to find the good in anything, but with the House of the Dead 2 remake, I am really picking through the scrap heap, trying to find a shred of something that I would say is good. Now, at least on the vibe, on the colorways, they more closely match the original House of the Dead 2 on Dreamcast and Sega Naomi here, versus the original remake, which completely just changed the art style of the House of the Dead. And because these games are so incredibly iconic, you do want it to at least feel like the universe that you remember from the original game. Now, the ragdolling in this obviously is way over the top. We just shot a zombie with a handgun, and somehow he did a full backflip just because of that. Physics would never allow for it, and the ragdolling needs to absolutely be tuned down because it is just completely unrealistic. And I understand we're talking about a game where you shoot zombies, but even realism matters when it comes to physics. You don't want things just flying around the screen, and some of the ragdolling is just 11 out of 10 over the top, and not in a funny good way, in a visually distracting way. And if you take a look at the colors here, at least they still have that kind of rusty hue when we were going through Italy back in the Dreamcast era. Now, of course, this is modern hardware, so it's never going to be able to 100% replicate that Dreamcast or Naomi look, but at least the developers got slightly closer to the task here, although honestly, I wouldn't say they did an incredible job. They just did a better than a bad job. And if we actually go into the options menu, you'll see here, it does default to keyboard and mouse, but again, I can't get past that first screen trying to actually get into the game. And as far as other options are concerned, it really is relatively limited here. Now, I have an i9 12900K overclocked on a water cooler. I have a 3080 Ti and 64 gigabytes of RAM, and this game would still stutter for me. And in the introductory cut sequences, just FMV videos that are playing, those had the worst frame rate of any FMV I've seen in a game released in probably like the last 10 years. There's just something not working correctly there. And again, on the graphics side, a few settings, maybe you'll get good performance, maybe you won't. Definitely does not feel optimized in any way, shape, or form. And this is not a very pretty game. It is decent looking, and I will say once you hear some of the voice acting as well, they have redone all the voices. It is for the worse. Sure, the original voices were terrible, but they were cheesy, janky terrible, which is fun. But go ahead and listen to the music, listen to the voice acting. I'll be right back to tell you more.
Reload! 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 Reload!
Seems like my device had no effect. I cheated.
I mean, of course the boss there didn't have the best voice acting in the original House of the Dead. It was always a little bit weird, but there you can barely even detect half of the words in the second sentence he says. It is stilted, it is strange, and I just don't understand why they just couldn't use the original voice lines or re-record them with actual intelligible words, because it just doesn't sound like anything there. It is relatively bad, but at least they got the graphical style a little bit more fun here, even if Hangman just does fly around so quickly. There's basically like a 2-frame window to hit him, and this is on normal difficulty. They've definitely upped that. As we move into the introductory cut sequence here, this is just an FMV video playing, and I know that because it is macro blocking as far as the compression is concerned, and that's not something that happened in Resolve. That's not something that YouTube stepped on and ended up macro blocking. That is just what I saw on my screen, and this FMV hitches and just basically does not play very well. I do not know why they would have compressed this so heavily to get to the point where there's macro blocking and banding in the background, and they are so hyping up the original House of the Dead remake, and that is not a look I would want if I were the developers, because that game is just universally across all platforms pan completely. It is just not a good time. And again, if you didn't watch that video, I will leave a link in the description below, but it was basically a masterclass in how not to remake a game. Changing the tone, changing the graphics, changing the colorways, changing the music, taking everything about the game that people loved and just removing it. And those worms should not be able to attack without their heads. But at least, again, like I said, they have fixed most of the hit detection. This is a clip from the original remake where I headshotted a zombie, getting feedback that I had shot him multiple times. One shot actually duplicated his model and still didn't affect him, and it didn't matter how many times I shot this scrub enemy, it just kept marching forward because it was determined to get that damage in. That's 7 shots that didn't register in the original remake. Now on the modern version, House of the Dead 2 remake, at least they have cleaned that up, but again, if that is how low the bar is, you can step over it because the bar is on the ground. We do have these intro sequences, and at least they have a little bit of charm to them, but again, if you can't get FMV running smoothly in a release, that really isn't a very good look whatsoever. And this demo is only one level. It takes you longer to watch the 2 intro FMV cut sequences than it does to actually play the initial demo of the game, and again, struggling to even get into the game with mouse controls is not a good look. And as far as any proper light gun implementation in the options menu, it just isn't there whatsoever. If you have a light gun that can work as a mouse, it should be fine, but it seems like this is definitely predicated to being a controller game, because when you launch it on Steam, they say to plug in a controller. It is the preferred way to play, and obviously light gun games are not supposed to be played with controllers. It is a last resort. If you have one light gun and you have a friend over back in the day, you give them a controller for player 2 and you just apologize and say, hey, I don't have more than one. But kind of designing the entire game around that concept, again, just doesn't hit whatsoever. And that's the reality of the House of the Dead 2 remake. At least in this first level demo, absolutely nothing works. Sure, the graphics aren't as bad as the original remake, but otherwise there's nothing about this that makes me want to play it over the House of the Dead 2 on Dreamcast or Naomi. And it's not like there aren't easy ways to do that. Dreamcast emulation is 100% buttoned up, as is Naomi. There's 100 ways to play the House of the Dead 2, and this should not count as one of them. But go ahead and listen to the voice acting, the new voice acting, which is somehow even worse than the original. A little taste of the original soundtrack as well, and I'll be right back to close out the video.
Amy! Harry!
Thank God you're all right.
What the hell's going on in the city?
Don't know, but it's very similar to the 1998 Curian case.
That case?
James, go and prevent the confusion in the city.
Okay.
Let's meet at Sunset Bridge. We're counting on you, James.
No more fooling around! No! Not G!
You gotta get up really damn early in the morning to outdo Sega when it comes to bad voice acting, but the developers here did that. Not only is the voice acting worse, but a lot of the breaks or beats between one line and another are too short, and it absolutely just makes the conversation sound so stilted and odd. And hey, at least I'm the unlucky one able to actually play this game. If you go to the Steam community page, so many people had FMV sequences running at 1 frame per second and an absolute ton of crashes that wouldn't even let them into the game. So take my word for it, it might just be a 1 level demo, but the disappointment is on offer here with the House of the Dead 2 remake. It's like slightly better than the original game. It's a 1.5 out of 10 versus a 1. But we're done. When the full game comes out, I'll definitely review it, but I don't expect it to get much better, sadly. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time, hopefully with a good game. Bye-bye.